Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hello, Rosie.
Hello.
How are you?
I am all right. I wasn't sure if you were doing video or not after what you said last week.
Judith hates video. She won't even consider it.
No, I can relate to that to a certain extent. But yes, I was thinking about, oh, goodness, better sort of sort everything out and everything.
Yeah, last minute.
Hello, that's my website.
Yeah. There's your website, indeed. So welcome, everyone. Right. I'm joined today for the last of my guest co-hosts, which is Rosie Slosek. Is that the right way to say it, Rosie?
It's Slosek.
Slosek. And you're the money haven.
I am.
Yeah, great. Well, just take a couple of minutes and tell us about you and your business and where people can find you and what you can help them with, and then we'll plunge into the usual agenda.
I'm Rosie Slosek. I live in Highgate, North London, which is a little piece of green paradise in a big city.
Yeah.
And I help women with their own businesses to understand and love the money side, instead of running away from it and going, ah.
Yeah.
And you can find me. I said I'm often on Instagram and Facebook. I think Judith said quite a bit recently about not particularly not understanding the social media quite so much. To say I've gone off Twitter a little bit recently, so I'm mostly on Instagram and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find me at themoneyhaven.com. And I thought I'd actually also mention that I'm also the co-founder of Youre Action. So a few of you probably remember all that lovely drama we had a few years ago when they brought in the EU VAT rules. It's settled down a bit now and it's gone global-ish. But I'm also a co-founder of Youre Action as well.
Okay. Now, Judith said I must ask you about that at some point, but yeah. but not to talk about it too long. Yeah, so if anyone is listening who doesn't understand what Rosie's talking about, we had a bit of a kerfuffle, as they say, in a couple of years ago when everyone suddenly, Rosie probably explained it better than I will. Should we save that for project updates? That would be an appropriate place to talk.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so how do you attract your clients, Rosie, and who do they tend to be?
It's a lot of word of mouth. But I also just love talking to people just online, back and forth. It's mostly women, because 10 or 15 years ago, I mean, you've been around that long, Nicola, I know, because actually you're the reason that actually I have a business in the first place.
Oh, how wonderful.
Which no doubt I'll get onto later. That's why I was so excited about being here. I was like, oh my goodness. But I mean, I was writing a blog post that's is the one that's going out last week, and I was saying, when I started the business on the canal, I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, it's 2006, and in 2006 it wasn't even in social media. I was thinking, oh my goodness, things have changed so much.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, and
the women I work with are businesses that, generally speaking, do not fit into the normal advice brackets. You couldn't go and work around the kids, around caring for relatives and all that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of people who've got businesses so-called on the side and so-called lifestyle businesses. But it's mostly women who are actually, they're real go-getters, but not in the sort of traditional ambitious sense, but they want a business that works for them, and they want a business that makes a good solid profit, whatever that means to them.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't got a clue, have they?
Yeah, and it's usually that the drive is there, the motivation is there, all of that stuff. But actually, it's a very different world now, and they're responsible and they go out and get advice, and usually it doesn't stack up. It is so different. And where do you go from that? So, I mean, I've even got, it's not on the website, I don't advertise it, but I found that particularly with me and with a lot of my clients, it's that whole there's so much anxiety and fear about the whole thing, just from other things, you end up not doing the stuff you want to do, and it gets in the way. I was listening to you talking to Susan last week about the marketing funnels and just all that back end of stuff. A lot of the time it doesn't happen, and all those things aren't in place because it's just so scary. And the money side is the scariest one of them all. So, I mean, I think the big thing about me is actually just tackling the scary as well as things. So it's just the practical side before you go off to the accountant, before you go off to the tax advisor, and before you go off to the IFA. So it actually ends up happening, and you can grow your business to 50k, 100k, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've just spent actually the last month working with someone from Bean Ninjas to get my up-to-date finances into Xero, because my business started in its current format in September, and I was still not really in a place mentally to do it, and I run my finances, business and personal, from a simple spreadsheet because it's a cash flow forecast, and I like to keep it update every week. I go and take a print out from the bank of what I've spent, and I come along and I bold it, or I move it along, or I delete it, or whatever. So I know what impact, every week the money I'm spending and the money I'm receiving has on my future. But I am aware that, and actually my accountant is my brother-in-law, and he's often worked from those spreadsheets quite happily, but I sort of had a feeling that I wanted to get it a bit more formal, so I thought I'll put it into Xero, and that has been the most difficult thing. I'm not, I've just had to buy another half an hour because I still haven't got it right so that it reconciles every month from the different bank accounts. But I can see how useful it is, because it means that if you pay one thing out of one bank account, you can assign it to whatever the expenditure was without having to do lots of jiggery-pokery and moving it around first. So I can sort of see that from a profit and loss point of view, I'm going to get a much clearer picture by using Xero, but I'm still not convinced it would help anyone to run their cash flow.
Well, it doesn't, because you see, Xero is about accounting, and accounting is a legal job that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And while there's very useful figures in there, like how much have you spent and what have you spent it on, and reviewing all of that, and we will do that as usually in a cake shop. It's actually even taken a step back. So things like, what have you spent and how you're comfortable with that, reviewing things. I remember you were talking to Susan about the annual memberships.
Yes. And
I was really struck by the fact that both of you had an awareness of all of this on your cash flow, and most don't. I mean, why not? No one ever tells you this. You've been in business a really long time.
Yeah, but also I became
no one tells you that.
Really fascinated with money. When I had the money gym, I started because it's what I most needed to learn. I didn't know how money worked because I'd never been taught it. And it was only really when some very, very wealthy friends of mine said, we run all ours on a weekly cash flow forecast. I thought, that's genius. Weekly is absolutely fantastic. What is your background in accounting then, Rosie?
It's just lots of bits and pieces, so sort of all put together. I mean, that's sort of why usually I'm the person who actually helps my clients actually get past the blocks. So there's, I basically think that, the money programs on Radio 4 are actually quite exciting. And just even, I can't remember the name of it now, but there's a program on Radio 5 that's ridiculously early in the morning that I listen to later, which actually it's all about keeping people up with what's going on in the city, as in the City of London, with all the shares and all that kind of stuff. And I don't quite follow a lot of it, but it's a window into a completely different world. And a lot of the time they talk about confidence and all this, and I'm thinking, confidence is a commodity like everything else. The confidence of the market's down, so the share price is down. I'm thinking, well, that happens in our businesses as well. Things just happen. But, it's seen as an objective thing. And I was thinking, basically, it just means that say someone gets sacked in Google, everyone goes, and the share price goes down. Now, that's not logical.
No, but it's somehow fear and greed, isn't it? Fear and greed.
Yeah, but somehow we're all, we expect ourselves to be, that is not to have a learning curve ourselves.
Right. And also, you said something interesting then about confidence. I mean, when the money gym finished and I went off to, try and figure out what to do next, my confidence had taken a massive knock because I felt that I should have seen it coming. And, it was a global recession combined with a, property, a credit crunch. Nobody was lending, and there was a global recession, and, there was loads of other factors going on as well. But I felt I should have had more foresight, and the company should have lasted longer than it did, and it shouldn't have been such a sudden situation where we closed it. So my confidence about being savvy with money had really took a massive knock, and that had an ongoing impact for the next couple of years, really, on my ability to earn money. Because when you lose your confidence, you can't charge what you're worth. And I mean, I remember there was one point I was going to my local Chamber of Commerce, and I was in a peer mentoring group, and I was doing their website, and they said, "Do you want to do this peer mentoring?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm not sure there's going to be anyone in there who is going to contribute to me," not being funny, but I've done this money gym for the last 10 years. I've done internet marketing for the last 10 years. Is there going to be anyone in this group who's even remotely as clued up as I am? And they said, well, why don't you just open your mind and go and be surprised? And funnily enough, I did. There wasn't really, but there was one other chap who became a really good friend of mine, and actually he's a global expert on gamification at the moment, and he's paid to go to Kuala Lumpur and places like that. But the hilarious thing was, we were both at this place in our businesses where we had no confidence. So he wasn't able to give it away, and I wasn't able to give it away. I mean, I was offering to do people's marketing for free. When you think, 6 months before, I'd been standing on stage with Brett McFall to a crowd of 200. It was just, the confidence is just such an issue for people.
Yeah, I mean, I find for a lot of my clients and just the whole crowd that I talk to, so much of it is actually going back generations, and they're often the first one it's not necessarily always the first generation of women to earn money, but the first generation where it's been safe enough to actually tackle all the sort of stuff that's come up through the generations when we couldn't do anything. And it's really hard work, and it's like, why can't I do this?
Yeah, limiting beliefs and negative beliefs about money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not often it's you, is it? It's actually just stuff, and that's where it comes in, really.
Anyway, we must crack on. I must move my let me just open up a new window in Momentum, and it's a good one today. It's a picture of Zakynthos Island. Zakynthos. I've never been to any of the islands. I've just stuck to the mainland, but that's a very nice picture. So where's your favourite place to go on holiday, Rosie?
Oh, goodness. It's going to have to be... Well, actually, if I was getting myself a bacon roll in the cafe yesterday, my other half rang up and said, "Do you want to go to Paris for the day?" I said, "Oh, Wales. That sounds nice." He said, "No, Paris." So the next thing I know, we've arranged. So the next thing I know, while I was sitting there in bacon roll, he's organised a surprise trip to Paris for October.
Lovely.
So I am very pleased.
Yeah, nice. It should be half decent weather, but not too hot at that time of year.
Yes.
So tell me about your week then, Rosie. What have you been up to this week?
Well, I thought I'd share, but actually, I was excited to be here today because way back in 2006, I didn't really know what I was doing myself. I'd come back from living in a different country, and my mum just borrowed a magazine from the coffee shop and gave it to me, and there was an article with you in it. Not that I'd ever heard of you or anything.
Woman and Home. It must have been Woman and Home.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it must have been.
And it was the sort of magazine I wouldn't normally read. I remember that, and I just read it because my mum had brought it and I was trying to be polite. And you mentioned Academy in there, which has now gone on to being called something completely different that I can't remember. Yeah.
Thomas and Penny Power started a networking company called Academy, which Daniel Priestley was very much involved with as well. And they've sold it on since, and it died a death. But they were really up on social networking. They really knew their stuff. So
yeah, so that's how I found. That's how I found Academy, and Academy got me onto actually an awful lot of the friends I still have. I found that even when I meet someone new, usually there's somebody at Academy actually at the bottom of the chain of people.
Yeah.
And you got me onto Academy, so it's absolutely a delight to be on here, Nicola.
Oh, well, that's wonderful, isn't it? I love hearing stories like that, because you never know, you just don't know who you're impacting with the things you do, but you have to trust. And that's actually one of the things that stops people getting started, because they don't believe that anything they do is going to make a difference. But I always think of it as like throwing pebbles in a pond. You don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to make a ripple, and you don't know where the ripple's going to go.
Or how long it could take until you find out.
Exactly. But, if you don't chuck the pebble in the first place, one thing's for certain, nothing's going to happen. So what else? That was lovely. So what have you been up to? What's your typical week look like work-wise?
Well, August, it hasn't been very much at all because that's what I do in August. I have a rest.
Uh-huh.
But no, once it gets going next week, I find I work really well at the beginning of the week. So Mondays and Tuesdays sort of get down, do solid amount, and then Wednesdays sort of the few more relaxing things. I usually write my content, do the blog post. Thursday I have a day off, and I go and sit in Starbucks and go and have a swim. But you'll probably know the drills. That's often when all the things that you haven't thought about during the week tend to come up.
Yes.
So it's notebooks out. I've written a lot of my courses sitting in Starbucks on a Thursday. But it's just a different environment. So I find that taking that day out by that point, the energy starting to go makes a huge amount of difference. And Friday is client day.
Oh, okay. So when you say client day, do you mean you're actually coaching people, talking about their money?
Yes, it's a combination of was a horrible phrase. It's sales calls, and actually, coaching. Or like I said, I like to go on a coach shop if it's for a half day.
Uh-huh.
But it's everything from helping you do your own tax return up to mentoring new businesses, and sometimes if I haven't got the clients to fill the entire day, because I don't know about you, but I can never do a complete block. I just too much of an introvert. But it's very helpful back to back that to actually write some of the course content at the time, because of course, while someone's sharing all their struggles with you, actually what to put in all of it. Because I also run a couple of courses, actually what to put in those, because after all, courses are sort of like one-to-one. I always write them one-to-one, as in like to one person, but obviously there's more people sharing them. So it's that combination of things.
Okay, so you really mix it up then, and you that's interesting about the different days. I'm a great believer in time zoning. I think it's really helps you be much more productive, and it helps you relax when you're actually having some time off, because you're supposed to be having the time off.
I haven't quite achieved that one yet, but it's getting better. I used to really stress. It used to be more blended. I used to get really stressed about it. But I often find that these things usually work themselves out, and when it's time, it's time.
Yeah. So my week's been quite interesting. I've had my 4th Greek lesson, and it's really tough. I mean, I had no idea. I feel like such a dunce, and I'm someone who loves to learn, and I'm really good at learning stuff fast. But this is not going to be a fast job at all. And I've got a really excellent teacher. She's highly recommended, and she's good fun. But it's things like they've got 18. And things. No, I can't remember any of my grammar from school. So she's using things like words like nouns, and I can't remember what they are. But anyway, so I thought, because I'm learning to read it as well as write it, because I'm a visual person, so she decided it would probably be easier. But you've got your Greek hieroglyphics, which is their alphabet, and then and they make such weird noises. I mean, there's something that looks like a peanut with a belt on. That's the. And then you've got something like six combinations of letters that make the sound E, but it's different kinds of sounds of E. So one's one's E, one's E. And it's all very hard work. But I've also just invested in the Michelle Thomas Learns Greek app, which you can buy, by the lesson, or you can buy sort of the whole thing. And I thought, if I lie on a sunbed and listen to him droning on with his 2 students, I could possibly pick up, more vocabulary that way, because I'm finding my short-term memory is absolutely appalling. So I'll learn a word and it will just go straight out my head. And they speak so quickly, the Greeks, that it's very difficult to distinguish how they're saying these complicated words. So it is tough, but I'm not going to give up, and I'm going to keep at it. But on Tuesday, my 2 kids arrived for their first holiday out here, and me going to hire a car, and I haven't driven for a year. So he gave me a stick shift, and the 45 minutes to get to Kalamata Airport is really very windy indeed. But by the time I got to the airport and found the new bypass, which was the most exciting thing, everybody talks about the bypass here, I was quite familiar with the car, and then picked the kids up, drove them back, and then we had to change the car, so I'm now in an automatic. So it's the whole car thing's been a little bit stressful, but it's lovely to see them. They've exploded into my house and made such a mess, I can't tell you. but I'm trying not to get uptight about the things that don't matter, because it's tidy the rest of the time and they're not here. So, I'd really rather that, they were here. And I've taken them out and we had a lovely evening out, but I'll tell you more about that later on. So what's fueled your fire this week then?
Well, I'm creating a Preparing for Growth course for the Design Trust. I've been wanting to work with Patricia for years. You know how you meet somebody and you just go, I really want to work with you. And then, you should vaguely keep in touch. And then suddenly, out of the blue, 3 years later, just one of those timing things. But what I really wanted to do was just to work with women who were wanting to get their business from that sort of 50k kind of stage up to about 150k, because you can get up to about, and this is turnover income rather than profit. You can get up to the back. It's like you start the business and basically you sort of you pretty much you jerry rig everything. You just throw things in. You just cobble it together, And when you want to get to that past a certain point of growth, it's just not going to work anymore. It might work for a bit, but it means that everything's going to start falling apart at the point when you actually are getting the growth in. It's the outsourcing, it's the delegating, it's get the team in place before it actually happens. So, but the course is actually really about just addressing, to be honest, it's actually really not so much about money. It's actually more about addressing the emotional side, because the money piece is usually slotted in later. So it's things I found with mine that I do all my organising of the business planning actually by the growing season. Basically, when the growing season it gets going, I do different things. So I do more group things. I will do more looking forward thing, and I'll do the batching for the blog post, like we said about the content. Go and batch all of that stuff up, get it all out. But in tax return season, when everything's going down again, it just happens to match for me when I need to be much more out there. That's when I'll do it. And it also ties into knowing when the money's coming and knowing when the expenses are going out. It all ties into what you were saying yesterday with last week with Susan. It's both of you, I noticed, were really aware about what was coming in and going out and all the energy. And that's actually really unusual.
Wow. So
it's tying all that together in one particular course. I'm really, really excited about it.
Oh, that's great. So you're doing this with the Design Trust, are you?
With the Design Trust.
And who are they?
It's run by a Dutch lady called Patricia van Ecker, and it's actually for the people mostly running crafts-based businesses. So
I think she was a client of Steve's. I remember him talking about the Design Trust.
It might be. She really, really knows her stuff. I met her, and I can't even remember when, it's too long ago, and went and had a look, and she does a lot of mentoring, there's a lot of workshops, but everything is really grounded in proper get things done. She's got, I think, similar kind of approach to you, Nicola, in that you need to have, there's a lot of, the groundwork needs to be done. Go and get the support for things, because if you don't put a certain amount of groundwork in, it's not going to work, basically. It's not.
I'm obsessed nowadays with systemizing everything. I just,
Oh yes, that's going in the course.
Yeah, because I'm such a chaotic person. I think a lot of creative people are. It sounds like the Design Trust clients would be quite creative as well. So, if you're a creative person, your brain's a bit chaotic, and systems don't come naturally to you. But once you discover their power of following a simple system, it sets you free to be more creative. That's the astonishing.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's about. And really the whole thing is, it's not about, oh my goodness, you need to know exactly what a balance sheet is, because, you don't. Not until at least you get to $250,000. But it's taking that step back and actually seeing the flow. So knowing the expenses flows, knowing the cost flows, knowing when the energy flowing, knowing what's going, when it's going out, and all of those things. If you don't take a step back and basically at least start to delegate everything and be aware of it, then you're going to be completely sunk when that big contract comes in, when that growth really starts to take off, because you can't do everything. And it's and actually, even if it doesn't matter, they're very creative in the sort of actually physically making things side.
Yeah.
But all of my clients are kind of creative people. I think we all sort of resist having a systematic system just because, well, can't I go tinkering?
Yeah.
But it's taking a step back, and actually we all use systems all the time. I mean, when you're baking, you have to use a system. If it's not going to work, even if you tinker around the sides, you have to. And, you know, there's always things we don't like. You start off with the systems for the stuff you don't like and get it out the way.
Yeah. No, it is interesting, and it's yeah, you said something really interesting there, but you know that it's everything has to have a system, and you can tinker around the sides. That's really important, and it just frees you up. You know, I mean, this week have you finished telling me about your week? No, we've done that one. We're on.
Yeah, good.
So
yeah.
Have you? It's just I don't want to jump in on top of you. So what's fueled your fire's been working with the Design Trust? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Was there anything else you wanted to say about that? Because I don't want to jump over the top of you.
No, we're good.
Okay, so exactly the same, because I've what's fueled my fire this week has been working with a creative type who's in the radio industry, and she's a really well-known radio person. You know, behind the scenes, she's a producer. She runs radio stations and all that stuff, and she's very creative. And I really got fueled up because my Be Everywhere online course, people sign up for it and then they still don't take the action, and it just drives me crazy. And
yes,
you know, if you listen to the podcast. So I thought to myself, what would be really nice would be to have one of these challenges that people have every so often. And I thought, Kate, now I'm just starting to work with Kate. We've struck a deal, and she is a content creator machine. I mean, she can just stand in front of a camera and just churn out content. She knows her stuff so deeply inside out that she can just talk about it for England. So I thought this is an ideal person to work with on this. So I thought I'm just going to go through my own system that I created for my students with someone like Kate. And she's so untechy. She's got no email subscribers. She's got no Facebook followers. She's got no subscribers on YouTube. She's got a great course that she's got no one to sell it to. And I thought this would be a really, really good case study of how just following a simple system for marketing on social media can make a difference. And it's a bit of a risk because I don't know if she's going to start selling this course, because she created the course before she asked her audience what they wanted. But at least I'm creating a mailing list for her, and we'll be able to ask those people what they need next. So even if this course doesn't sell in great numbers, the next thing she makes will be something that her audience and market want, rather than just something Kate thinks they need. And we're all guilty of that. Well, I'm particularly guilty of that. I've created course over the years without doing any research at all about what people actually wanted to buy. So anyway, I thought it was a brilliant idea. And so as is my want, I jumped straight in. I said to Kate, are you cool with this? She said, yes. I said, we had a call. I put it on Facebook. It got loads of engagement. I put it on YouTube, getting lots of engagement. And then I suddenly thought, no, I should have done an introduction before I actually jumped in on one. So I then had to go back and do an introduction. And that is just typical of the way I work. But I'm a 9 on the quick start. You know, the Colby A Index. Have you ever done yours?
No, I've never heard of that.
Oh, okay. Well, it's really good. I was introduced to it by Rich Sheffrin. If you do the wealth dynamics test, it'll tell you.
Yes, I've done that. Yeah.
Your fastest route to the money, the thing where you're in your flow. What did you come out on that then?
Oh, now you're asking. I can't even remember.
Creator, star, mechanic, supporter, lord, accumulator. Anything ring bells? No.
I can remember that Lord was definitely not that one. Other than that, I can't remember, but I recognise the names. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, worth digging out because the wealth dynamics tells you how your easiest route to the money is. You know, how when you're in your flow, what, you know, that gives you a clue about that. But the Colby A is a similar kind of multi-question test, and it gives you your preferred method of taking action. So are you a quick start? Are you a researcher? Are you a follow-through? Are you an implementer? And knowing your balance on the Colby A Index, which is used by a lot of big corporate companies, it helps you put a team together for a start, and it helps you balance out your negatives and your positives. So I'm a 9 on the quick start and about a 2 or 3 on everything else, on the research, follow through and implementer. But I must have more implementer than I came out on the test, because I do put things into action. I don't just get off to a quick start, but I do force myself to follow through on the implementation.
That does sound very familiar, I have to admit. Yeah.
So it's a really good one, and a lot of my clients, I get them to do it as well before we start working together, because it helps me know, if someone's a quick 7 on a quick start, but they're a 7 on a research, I know that their quick start is going to be largely balanced out by their need to research first. And I'm going to have to be the boot that kicks them out of the research mode at some point when we've decided we've done enough research there. So, so anyway, I can't remember why we were going down that road. But yeah, so anyway, it was all about the fact I'd got off to a quick start and I hadn't done the planning, no planning whatsoever. I had it all in my head, but I hadn't actually sat down and planned it out on paper. I hadn't created a simple system for creating a challenge, which now I've gone back and I've done that now. So, but it did get me going. It fueled my fire, all right. Here at Own It, we personally believe that leaders are readers, but sometimes it's just not convenient to read and you'd rather listen instead. For listeners of Own It the podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. A couple of titles we've picked out for you particularly are Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg or Crush It, Why Now is the Time to Cash In on Your Passion by Gary Vaynerchuk. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/ownit. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ownit for your free audiobook. You can pick one of the ones I've chosen for you, or you can choose something else. Enjoy your listen. So what's the client challenge of the week? I'm loving the fact that I'm not having to think them up and that the guest co-hosts are bringing them. What's the client challenge of the week you've brought this week then?
Mine is, do you pay yourself?
Oh.
And this sounds like a really silly question, because probably everyone listening to this has a business or at least wants one, and the definition of a business is making profit. But you'd be surprised how many women don't know how much they're paid when they're paid. If they've got a limited company, they don't know why they're paid what they're paid. Or if they've asked their accountant, the accountant doesn't really want to have the conversation. And for that matter, just whether it works for you, and that horrible phrase tax efficient, which isn't my department, but it's quite an important one. But so many, usually on my group courses, but they don't actually even pay themselves, particularly at the beginning. And it's not actually about how much money you're making or you're not making. It's just paying yourself just a little bit. And just this whole area about being aware of it and making sure that how you pay yourself and the amount you're paying yourself actually works for your personal finances. I've been quite surprised, actually. Even for some really, really organised, very successful women who've got businesses like way over the back threshold, which is about 85k. That's in sterling if you're not in the UK. Yeah. They don't actually know how much they're paying yourself. This isn't just a UK thing, because a lot of these things can often be very cultural. I haven't found a country yet where it's not actually the case. Okay, so let's my challenge would be do you pay yourself? Go back to looking at actually how much you put in your bank account, and actually just being aware of that, so you can actually start to go forward with it. Yeah, because there was a lot of not knowing what profit you're making, so there's gross profit, there's net profit, and different people count that differently. So some people count, there's your turnover, which is the money your business makes. Then you've got your gross profit, which is usually what your turnover less what it costs to make the thing that you're selling. So that's cost of sale, isn't it? But when I read Profit First, he put marketing in cost of sale, because he was saying that unless you market your business, you're not going to make any money. So he
he, for the purposes, it's not an accounting thing, like a legal accounting thing, but for the purposes of the spreadsheet he gets his clients to use, marketing goes in the cost of sale. And then also directors' pay provision goes in there as well, which is where you move enough money out of your main account to be able to pay yourself next month. I think that's how it worked, because I found the book Profit First really fascinating. And again, then you've got a business where perhaps they're not making a profit, but the owner's drawing money out to live on, and that's illegal, isn't it? Is it as strong as illegal, or?
Well, it depends if you're the equivalent of sole trade in your country, so you're not like a separate legal entity, or if you are. So if you're a limited company, then your salary, but not the dividends, is that's an expense. So that's fine. That's, again, this is why I do know why you're paid how you're paid.
Yeah.
Because that's one reason why you might want to pay yourself more than the usual arrangement. If you're a sole trader, then it's a completely different story. I mean, obviously, you sort of can't. I mean, just even on a really more basic level, which is the profit is the amount of money coming into the business minus every single cost, and it's not what's on the tax return, because that's different. The tax return's the tax return, but that's not how much money you've made. You've made less than that, because there's always going to be stuff that you don't get help with,
Yes.
you don't get a tax deduction on.
Yes,
Depending, there's different systems, but and just even on that very, very basic basis. I mean, I had one client recently who just thought she didn't make a loss, and wonderfully it turned out we did an expenses review. Wonderfully it turned out that actually she was fine. She'd actually still made a profit. She hadn't spent 150k simply because she'd actually been paying herself a sensible amount while she'd been going on, but she wasn't aware of it, and that awareness was worth the 2 hours going through everything.
Yeah, and
it's just the awareness.
Yeah, and the thing is about most accountants is, people think your accountant's there to help you be a better business person, but actually no, the accountant's there just to sign off that you've declared honestly your income and your expenditure. You need to find someone like yourself who's a lot more proactive and can really help you understand how business finances work, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's technically speaking, the accountant is basically there to tick a legal tick box, and some of them will go through more things, the better ones, but basically they're still there to tick a legal box. And this is really just sort of taking a step back and just being aware of all of it. And it's no particular shame about it. I mean, no one teaches this stuff, pardon me, but it's not there, and we're all on a massive learning curve. It's one of the reasons why I just love podcasts like this, because to have people who have been around a while and sort of people can like look up to, so to speak, you to say, well, I had to learn this and I had to learn this. That's how we all get there. I mean, we're all better and good at different things, but no one randomly suddenly knows all this stuff, and it can be so different. Just something simple.
Yeah, and you can backslide, I mean, I was doing my finances weekly on this spreadsheet. And then last year I came into some money from a pension that I wasn't expecting. And it coincided when, losing Steve, and my brain just wasn't in the game. It totally wasn't. It was like, you look back and you think, oh my God, it was like flu. I didn't realize I was so ill, when you get better. But one of the things was I just couldn't be asked. I couldn't be asked to do that weekly spreadsheet. And because I had a big chunk of money in the bank, I felt I could give myself 6 months off from doing it. But actually looking back, I regret that now, because I could have made that money last so much longer if I'd known the impact of what I was spending this week would have on 6 months' time. So, cash flow management, I think, is one of the most crucial skills for a business person. And then getting educated about how your business finances works, and knowing what kind of tax implications you're going to incur months before they come. That's the thing. So many people are working in arrears, aren't they, rather than working proactively in advance.
Or even if you don't know, there's you can, being aware of roughly what it is. I mean, like what the rates are and what is likely to happen, because you're going to know if you've suddenly got a big chunk in, because with any luck you're actually tracking everything, at least the money coming in, and you can know enough, and you can actually put more, you can actually put money aside. So you might not be able to track it for that amount of detail. But it's just the awareness. I mean, I created a 28-day challenge for it last year with the actual goal of not necessarily scaring everybody, but it's got some very, very, very simple spreadsheets, whisper the word in it, which are really just all about actually just finding the numbers, putting the numbers in it. And it's including things like how many days of digital detox you have off. It's not just the scary ones.
Yeah.
But it's just about the awareness, because, I mean, most of us don't do it. It's not just because you don't know where to go. It's because it's all that sort of, you don't have the confidence. What do you do? You don't have the confidence about it and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just the little step-by-step bit, and you just note the numbers without necessarily doing anything with them. And over time, you feel better. And then it's amazing how much progress you can make when you actually take the pressure off.
And it really helps you sleep at night, doesn't it? I mean, if you've got
yes.
Otherwise, you've got this vague, nebulous fear hanging over you that something awful is going to happen. And it stops you doing the thing that will make your business a success, which, in my opinion, is the marketing. But if you've got this vague black cloud of money worry hanging over you, you don't do your marketing, and you certainly don't give off the best vibe when you're doing your marketing if you've got money worries, that's for sure.
Yes. Actually, that brings me on to the word of the week, actually, when we get there.
It's nearly time to move on, but I just want to quickly remind everyone about how I first came across balance sheets and how to use them was in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, playing the cash flow game.
Oh, yes.
Because they had little simple balance sheets in there. And it was the first time I really understood about assets and liabilities. So,
Yes, his second book was the one I really liked, because it breaks it down into, I think it was employed, self-employed, business owner and investor. And business owner in this case means it's something like you're not actually the person working the business. So, his definition was you can leave it for a year. And there's more categories, because I think he wrote it quite a long time ago. There's probably more categories in there than, because now you could have a self-employed business where you could arrange things to leave it for a year, and it's not quite the same thing. But I remember looking at that, and suddenly a lot of things suddenly all made sense. And it's not like anything in life had actually changed, but suddenly a lot of things that bothered me didn't bother me anymore, because I knew where I was and where I was going. Yeah. So I would recommend that one. It's it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad 2.
Yeah, there's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is sort of gives you the whole big picture concepts. And then you've got Rich Dad, Poor Dad 2, which is the one where you're talking about. The one I really, really like from a business owner's point of view is Rich Dad's Guide to Investment. The first couple of thirds of the book is a bit dull, but then it starts to talk about the most sophisticated investment of all, being your own business. And interestingly, it's the most sophisticated investment, so it's the most dangerous. But lots and lots of people who are unqualified to invest in the stock market, for example, they wouldn't be allowed to invest in the stock market in America, particularly because they're unqualified investors, are allowed to invest in their own business, the most risky of all. But then it goes on to talk about how to make your business attractive to a potential purchaser or a potential investor. And I think for a business person, that's really solid advice, because you're investing your own time and money into your business. It's the most risky investment of all, but it's also the most potentially profitable and lucrative investment, because you will be able to sell it for a multiple of profits. But until you've got all your ducks in a row with the stuff that Rosie and I are talking about today, knowing what your cash flow is, knowing what your profit and loss is, nobody's going to be even remotely interested in buying your business or investing in it, are they?
No, it's called an exit strategy as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And so Rich Dad's Guide to Investment, the last third of the book is brilliant. Really good. Well worth it. Well, we ought to move on. So talking of word of the week, what's your word of the week then?
So I wanted to say no pressure, but that's 2 words. So it's pressureless, because actually decided that's what I'm going to be doing this year. I just feel that a lot of the time you see what the people are doing, you listen to podcasts and just within ourselves, and we just put so much pressure on ourselves, just the expectations, new projects, all this kind of thing. And I'm going to, this new year, because I sort of start my focus for the year in September, I'm going to try taking off the pressure and see how it goes. It's almost like, when you take a day off and you go somewhere else, suddenly everything creative starts flowing. So I'm going to try very hard not to do anything new, because I'm a starter like you. Yeah. And just, I mean, because this year I've changed the business name, I've rebranded, I've moved websites, and to be honest, that's probably quite enough to be getting on with. So pressurelessness.
Pressureless. I'm not sure it's a real word, whether Judith will let you have it or not.
No pressure. That's mine. It's actually taking the pressure off ourselves.
Yeah, nice one. So how have all those things had an impact? Have you got any way of measuring whether those things you've done, the branding and the website has had an impact at all?
Not yet. It's sort of a bit too new because I did it at the I did all the changes at the time when everyone starts to pay attention to other things. That's what I say. It's about. It sounds weird. It's a little spontaneously planned. As it was spontaneous, but it'd been coming for a while, and I chose the time when fewer people are paying attention to what I do just because of the time of year.
Okay, fair enough. So you rebranded
So
you rebranded from what to the Money Haven?
It was one-man band accounting, which I outgrew about 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
But you can't really change the name until you know what you're going to change it to. And finally came up earlier someone actually came up with a name for me. Actually, I was just talking about it in a group on Facebook, and someone said, "What about this?" And I was like, "You're a genius."
Uh-huh.
It is absolutely wonderful, and it's been amazing since then. It's only this year when I actually did the relaunch, but it's been amazing. So many pieces that I've tried to put into place over the years have suddenly gone ping, 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 ping. It's just been really, really nice. I've had a lot of good feedback. Everything feels a lot more settled and in flow with who I am.
Yeah.
And what I do actually hasn't changed very much. It's just it fits better with what I do.
Okay. Well, one-man band accounting is good too, but it makes it sound like it's you doing the work. Whereas the Money Haven sounds like it's somewhere where people come to feel safe and learn about their money in a safe environment. So the branding's good, I think.
Well, actually, that's good, because actually that was exactly what I wrote down.
Okay, good stuff. Well, mine is family. We were sitting around yesterday because we had a most monstrous thunderstorm yesterday, and sitting around talking about, what should we go and get a family tattoo, like all get the same one, and
oh wow,
we were looking up the words for, because we're all quite keen on tattoos, and we were looking up the word for family in Greek, and then we started looking at other Greek hieroglyphics, symbols, because Nelson decided he doesn't want the word family, even in Greek, he wants a symbol instead. So, but we're probably going to give up on that idea, because the nearest tattoo parlour is in Kalamata, and I don't feel up to driving there just to get a tattoo. So it was just a nice idea we were discussing as the thunderstorm rumbled overhead. Right, so we're on to project updates now. Let me just go back to my tab that tells me the time. What have you been working on? Oh, you haven't really been working on much over August then?
Well, not over August. I've got, what I'm going to be doing is there's a lot of rebranding still to do. I've got all the downloads, all my courses, they all need rebranding, and there's got second editions coming out. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And I've just been quietly doing mentoring by word of mouth for women who are stuck in their business because of overwhelming fear and anxiety. So that doesn't involve any launching of anything.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients, that's basically where they are, and I've been there myself. It's one of those. I shared just a part of my story in a group, just how I was feeling at that particular time, because I just had a breakthrough in a very private group. And there was just a complete outpouring of, I feel like this, I feel like this, I feel like this. And I'm a bit further on in the story. So it's still been very quiet, but I'm doing it by word of mouth. But I'm really just absolutely loving doing it. It's just really, really, really good, because I suddenly realised, because of that post, that actually I've got an awful lot of tips and techniques and tricks, and just the insight that's enabled me to get to where I am. But actually a lot of women haven't had that. So it's just, I suppose it's mentoring and guiding, and so it's so frustrating just being that stuck. It's just you can't describe it. It is so frustrating, because you just keep trying, particularly if you're sort of very action oriented. You keep trying, it doesn't work, and you keep trying, it doesn't work. And it's like, what is going on? And you want to do things and somehow you can't. And so that's one of my project updates. And yeah, I've got the second run of my tax return success group program. It starts in September. And the other thing I say is my yeah, well, it's for doing your own tax return, basically, without being absolutely terrified.
Yeah. But also, not only that, but not being absolutely terrified, but a lot of people pay hundreds of pounds to an accountant to do this, not realising it's actually quite an easy job if you get a grasp of it yourself.
I mean, it is. Because, I mean, I actually have women on there who've got an accountant doing it for them. It's just that the accountant doesn't want to tell them what they're doing and the decisions they make for them, because you'll know that what's tax deductible isn't often black and white. You have to make a decision somewhere down the line and have justification for it, and they might be making a decision that you're not comfortable with, or at least the very basic you want to understand. So it's just about understanding, and whether or not you do your tax return yourself is up to you. But it is about that understanding. It's an online course with group support course, but it's the understanding part. Because you can have someone do it for you. So it's horrible feeling powerless and not knowing what they're doing, because it's quite important.
And also, you're still responsible, even if you've paid someone hundreds of pounds to do it for you.
Yes.
Ultimately, you're still responsible. If the tax office come knocking on the door and saying, what made you make that decision about what that was tax deductible, and you say, well, my accountant decided. That's no excuse. The tax office don't want to hear that.
Yeah, it's just the understanding part, really. So yeah, it's
good.
Carry on.
Yeah, that's good. So my project updates, I'm just going to report on the podcast as usual. We're ending August 300 downloads up, and our 3-month
wow
too. So that's rather good. So I'm very happy with that. We're on to the last stretch now. You're doing well, Rosie, as a co-host. So who or what's impressed? And let's keep it short, and we'll come in under the hour, and that'll be great.
Brilliant. Well, I've been doing this with Walker. She does, I think she calls herself a media coach, but she's got a group called the DIY PR Lounge, I think. But I've been wanting to do more media and press for a long time. But, writing pictures and things, frankly, it's a bit intimidating. And just, I love her approach, because it's very relaxed. And if she sees something on Twitter, like a journalist request, she will share it. And it's her approach has just made the whole thing a lot less scary. And the past few months, I've caught myself doing all sorts of things to do with the press and media. There's no way I would have done 6 months ago. So
I missed her name.
That's what impressed me. Kerry Walker. It's Kerry with an I.
Okay, Kerry Walker, and it's DIY PR Lounge.
Yes, that's on Facebook.
Okay, cool. Well, go and check it out. Yeah, PR can be really good for you. I got a lot of really good PR in the early days at the Money Gym. Journalists are fascinated with anything to do with money, but they're terrified of it at the same time. It's really interesting.
Yes.
They earn well, but they've got but they're really clever people, but they've also got really closed minds about how things should be and how things have always been. So they really are challenged by the whole idea of wealth creation. Okay, so who or what's impressed me this week is just my kids. Wonderful to see them. I threw them in at the deep end on a big social event on Tuesday night. And when I looked around at one point, I was talking to someone and they were chatting to someone else. And just the very fact that kids feel confident enough in a bunch of strangers, adults they've never met before. And, they're 19 and 22 now, so they're pretty much grown up themselves. But just the very fact they can just sit and chat confidently to strangers and have a laugh was really nice. And I felt very proud of them. So,
yes, I'm quite impressed with that one, because I can't do that yet, and I'm nearly 40.
Well, they obviously got the outgoing bit of me. Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Rosie. It's been a real pleasure to meet you and to hear about the fact that I've had made a little dent in your life, which is nice, and to hear what you've done with it as well and how you're helping other people going forward.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Nicola. Thanks.
Right, speak to you soon, hopefully. Bye. Bye. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.